How's it going, folks? This is Mike back for part 4 of my Halloween countdown, talking about the films based on the writings of Edgar Allan Poe as directed by Roger Corman in the 1960s. So we are up to Tales of Terror. This is film number 4. This is an anthology, 3 different stories. Vincent Price stars in every one of them. So Vincent Price is back with a vengeance. He missed out on the chance to work in The Premature Burial, but at this time he gets to play 3 very different parts, showing off his great versatility as an actor. And speaking of Vincent Price, I know you've seen this in other videos, but yeah, I'm a big fan of good old Vincent Price. Okay. So Roger Corman brings back some of his production team. He has his very talented cinematographer. I don't say that very well. Cinematographer. Okay, how about cameraman? We'll just say that. Floyd Crosby, and his very talented art director Daniel Haller. And once again, we have Richard Matheson back. He wasn't around for The Premature Burial, but he's back for this one, doing the screenplay. And these little stories are all done very well. They're all very different. The second one is done completely for comedy. Okay, so I'm going to try not to give away spoilers this time, because I did that with The Premature Burial, and that may turn off a lot of people from wanting to actually see the movies. So I'll try not to. I'll try to zip myself up before telling you too much. The first story in the anthology is Morella, based on the story Morella. Now, in this story, Vincent Price plays a man named Locke, who has been living in seclusion for 26 years in this gloomy mansion, which looks not unlike the House of Usher once again. Anyway, so he's been living in seclusion in sort of an alcoholic haze. We all know about those, don't we? Ever since his beautiful young wife, Morella, played by Leona Gage, died shortly after giving birth to a daughter. The daughter is named Lenora. So the daughter, Lenora, played by the grown-up daughter, played by Maggie Pierce, is coming back to the mansion to see her father, basically for the first time in her life. And she gets into the house and finds the whole thing, everything covered in decay and cobwebs and paint peeling off the walls. She goes into this banquet hall where this large table is set with food and drinks, silverware, and a gigantic layer cake in the center, all of which has been sitting there for 26 years, ever since the lady Morella had tried to give a lavish party a few days after she gave birth to her baby. And unfortunately, she collapsed and died that same night. So Lenora's father has left everything exactly as it was. So the sets are terrific. I mean, it just shows this incredible atmosphere of gloom and decay everywhere. And the layer cake covered with spider webs. And once again, we get to see the Roger Corman tarantula, who made an appearance earlier the same year, 1962, in The Premature Burial. I'm pretty sure it's the same tarantula. He, or could be her, I can't quite be sure, gave his greatest performance in this film. So Lenora meets her father. He is not happy to see her. They do not have a very functional relationship. And he tells her that after his wife died, and she was blaming the baby for her death, he actually went crazy and he tried to kill Lenora, his daughter. He actually tried to kill her. But instead of doing that, he sent her away. So she spent all of her life in boarding schools, and he was supporting her financially, but he has not seen her since she was a baby. So when Lenora said, I wish you had killed me, he actually turns toward her and starts to change his attitude. So he finds out that Lenora is ill and she only has a few months to live, and that's one reason why she wanted to see her father. So anyway, they kind of have a meeting of the minds, and he is a little softer towards her, and he asks her to stay for a while. Well, meanwhile, the spirit of Morella has been kind of reawakened by the fact that her daughter, the one who took her life, is back in the house. I'm not going to tell you any more than that, but the story of Morella is significant in the Poe series because this is the first time that anything that's truly supernatural happens in any of the films. We see a ghost, we see a spirit. In all the other films, we have people who were buried alive because they had died in a state of catalepsy, which is a very human medical condition. And I've been drinking way too much. And we also have a lot of people who are pretending to be buried alive. We have a lot of people who are going crazy and thinking they're someone else, but that's just normal insanity. This is actually someone being possessed, and it's done very well. Morella is a very creepy story. I actually think that it's the best story of all three in the film Tales of Terror. So highly recommended. The next one is called The Black Cat, and this one introduces Peter Lorre, another kind of a horror icon from the old days, who makes his debut in the Corman Poe series. This one is this story is based not only on the Black Cat, but on another Poe story called The Cask of Amontillado, which is a kind of a wine. And so anyway, Lorre plays. This is done for comedy, by the way, almost completely for comedy. So I guess it was kind of refreshing for Corman to be doing something that was funny for a change. Anyway, Lorre plays a character named, oh, I got to get this right, Montresor Herringbone. Trying to roll that around your tongue a few times. Montresor Herringbone, who is a drunk, hasn't worked for 17 years, does nothing but drink at the corner bar, come home and berate his beautiful young wife, played by Joyce Jameson. And of course, she is very long suffering. The only money coming into the house is what she gets for being a seamstress. And she also has this black cat, which is probably her best friend. And the black cat drives Peter Lorre crazy, or Montresor. He's always saying, "Get away from me, I can't stand you." And the cat just can't seem to keep away from Montresor. He's always climbing on top of him and purring and trying to get next to him and all this sort of thing. Well, so one day, Montresor happens to sort of walk into a building where there's a wine tasting exhibition going on, or seminar, if you want to call it that, featuring a man named Fortunato Lucrezi, played by Vincent Price, and he is a professional wine taster. I don't even know. I suppose they have people like this, or did back in the day, but Vincent Price is perfect. He is so sort of over the top in his what's the word I'm trying to use? Just very upper class, and with his expressions, he's very theatrical. He's very prissy. And he looks like he's having a great time playing this part. So Montresor knows a lot about wine, although he's not a professional. So he challenges Fortunato to a wine tasting contest. And that's really one of the best parts of the story, where they start drinking and they start exchanging back and forth. And Vincent Price, with all of his weird, exaggerated facial expressions of a wine taster, is very funny. So the result of all this is that Montresor gets roaring drunk, even more than usual, and Fortunato, being a nice man, he tries to help him home. And when he's there, and after Fortunato has passed out, he's sitting there with Annabelle, and they have an immediate attraction to each other. Things happen very fast in these Corman Poe films. They don't have long, drawn-out character development. They happen very quickly, just like the movies do. So they begin having an affair, and Montresor finds out, and he seeks revenge. And that's all I'm going to tell you. So it's a very, very funny little movie. Peter Lorre is terrific. He's probably doing a lot of improvisation. I know that when I was reading about the next one he's in, which is The Raven, he improvised a lot of his scenes and a lot of his dialogue. So yeah, this is a very cool addition to the Poe cinema. And it gets a little creepy toward the end, but it is definitely a very funny segment. Joyce Jameson was one of my favorite comedians from that era. She was a beautiful actress, all over television, all over all kinds of sitcoms and variety shows during the 1960s. She had appeared in Billy Wilder's The Apartment in 1960, doing a spot-on imitation of Marilyn Monroe. And she would be back a year later in a movie called The Comedy of Terrors, which is not directed by Roger Corman, but it's kind of a parody of the Edgar Allan Poe films. And she would be back with Vincent Price, Peter Lorre, and Boris Karloff. Very funny movie. Okay, So that takes us up to the final segment of Tales of Terror, which is the case of Mr. Valdemar. Now this one gets pretty involved. Um, Mr. Valdemar is an elderly man who is very sick and in a lot of pain, played by Vincent Price, married to a beautiful young woman named Elaine, played by a beautiful actress named Deborah Paget. And she even though there's a big age difference, she really does love her husband. She's very loyal, even though she has a strong attraction toward their family friend, a young doctor played by David Franken. But she is completely loyal to her husband. And Mr. Valdemar has a friend, if you want to call him that, a Mr. Carmichael, played by Basil Rathbone, who happens to be a mesmerist. Okay, you don't hear much about mesmerists these days, but Mr. Carmichael has been mesmerizing Mr. Valdemar to help alleviate his pain, and it's been working. So Valdemar trusts him quite a bit, and he has requested that at the time of his death, when his death is imminent, he has asked Carmichael to mesmerize him one final time so that he will die in peace. Well, so that happens, and unfortunately, something goes wrong with the mesmerism. They're mesmerizing, and although Mr. Valdemar actually dies, his mind stays alive in some kind of afterlife, some weird state where even though Mr. Valdemar is not moving his lips, you can hear his voice just coming from out of his mind, I guess. And he's talking about what it's like to be in that period or place after death. And Carmichael is fascinated, and he refuses to try and release this man from the mesmerism, even though the wife is freaking out. The family friend says this is totally unethical. You need to let him go. Carmichael is overtaken by his own power that he has over Valdemar beyond death, and he wants to see what's going to happen. Well, as the story goes, you see what happens. Carmichael also has his wandering eye on the beautiful young wife, Elaine. Okay? Very good horrific ending to the trilogy. And you get a good chance to see Vincent Price in some very horrific makeup, which heretofore hasn't happened in the series. So, yeah, it's very good for that respect. Basil Rathbone, as I said, would appear once again in Comedy of Terrors. He didn't do any other Poe films, though. That's right, he didn't. But he's very good in this. Another Shakespearean actor, just like Vincent Price. So he's perfect for the Edgar Allan Poe series. And he just chews the scenery like crazy. Deborah Paget was a beautiful, beautiful actress who had been an extremely popular star back in the 1950s. Started out in the 1940s. I think she was still a teenager. And she was also very well known for having co-starred with Elvis Presley in his first movie, Love Me Tender. So she's a very, very good actress and a good addition to the list of gorgeous heroines that Roger Corman picked for all of his films. Okay, I guess that's all I want to say. I hope I didn't give away too many spoilers for this, and that you will want to see the Tales of Terror. And I will be back to complete the series, hopefully in the next 2 days. Try to get it done by Halloween. So, okay, thank you for watching.